Welcome to Conversations, a podcast provided by the Center for Thriving Leaders and sponsored by Grace Theological Seminary. I'm Dr. Trent Lambert, and we are here to help leaders thrive in ministry. Let's jump into the conversation for today. Welcome to Conversations, a podcast provided by the Center for Thriving Leaders, sponsored by Grace Theological Seminary. I am Dr. Trent Lambert, and we are here to help leaders thrive in ministry. And so with no further ado, let's jump into our conversation, a little bit different today. So make sure, everybody, that you kind of, put things aside. You got to lock in. You got to listen to this information. It's going to be very, very helpful for you. And here by phone call today at the podcast room at Grace Theological Seminary, we have Justin Keeler of Thrivent. And so welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks so much, Trent. Just so excited to be here and get to connect with you and your audience today.
Let me tell you just a little bit about Justin before we jump into our conversation. Justin Keeler is a financial advisor with Thrivent. Prior to working with Thrivent, Justin was in full-time pastoral ministry and also ran a remodeling business. In ministry, he saw the impact on families when a loved one passed away and there had been little or no planning to navigate that storm. He has also seen the challenge of people not having saved adequately for retirement and the stress that causes. He wants everyone he works with to have a better story to tell. Justin and his wife Heidi desire to make an impact with their lives and finances. They've been married 21 years and have two daughters, ages 12 and 15. So yes, there are eventually two weddings to pay for. And Justin, I'm right with you. I have two daughters as well. One's already married and I'm saving for the next one.
Nice.
He grew up in Central Oregon and has lived in 5 different states: Washington, Oregon, Montana, North Dakota, and South Dakota. He and his family love to travel and enjoy any place with a beach or a cabin in the woods. Vacations and mission trips have taken them to 9 different countries outside of the U.S. Justin enjoys spending free time playing golf and woodworking. Once again, Justin, welcome to the Conversations podcast.
Yeah, thanks again so much, Trent. And just so glad to be able to be here, connect, and just share a little bit about my journey, and then talking about some financial topics and concepts and things that I think will be helpful, especially in the pastoral space. So, yeah.
Amen. Well, congratulations to you on 21 years of marriage. That's a great achievement.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we pretty fun. We met in college, and we definitely had the ring by spring, set up for my wife. And I definitely didn't go into college with that in mind, but that's how it played out. And we've been married 21 years now and 2 daughters, and it's been a fun journey. So
yes, in the Bible college world, sometimes we are called a bridal college, right?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. There's always those jokes out there, and I guess for me and my wife, that's how it worked out, and it's been really good.
Yeah.
And to find a spouse.
And you have 2 daughters. One is a teenager. One looks like as a preteen, right on the cusp.
Yep.
So how is your house with 2 teenage daughters, if we could say that?
Sure. Yeah. I would say it is eventful, and our older daughter, younger daughter, they're also 2 totally different personalities. So our older daughter is much more of the gregarious, out there, wants to be with people, hanging out, have fun. She's a theater kid, so she just loves to do the acting thing and all that. And then our younger daughter is more of a stays to herself. She's got her 2 or 3 close friends, and then she loves sports. So she's all in on basketball and volleyball, and so they're really, really good kids. They're a lot of fun. Sometimes they get after each other, and then the next minute they're hugging each other. So there's a lot of the ups and down emotions going on. But all in all, they're really good kids. We're blessed.
And as a financial advisor, I hope you are saving for those future weddings. They are not cheap.
Definitely on the radar. Yeah, right. I think they say the average wedding today costs $30,000, which I think you can get it done for less than that, but that's where we're at now. Yep.
My oldest daughter was married 2 years ago, so I can certainly attest to, the financial expenditures for that. So I'm trying to convince my other daughter on a destination wedding, and let's just go, and I'll just marry you on the beaches of Hawaii, but I haven't sold her on that yet.
Oh man, I like it. I'm gonna keep that one in mind. I would love to do something like that for one of the girls. We'll see how that all plays out.
Yeah,
But,
good luck to you on that.
right.
Hey, this is a really important podcast today. You come from a pastoral background. I come from a pastoral background, and so we're going to spend some time talking about that. But before we jump in, one of my favorite things to do outside of talking family with my guests is hearing about their journey with Jesus. How did you come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, my friend?
Yeah. Well, I would say I had the privilege of growing up in church, and that was primarily due to my mom coming to faith actually while she was pregnant with me. So she was 6 months pregnant, and her and my dad had given their lives to Christ for the first time at the I guess pestering of my dad's brother for many years. And so they came to Christ. And then after I was born, I remember clearly at age 5, being in one of our Sunday school classes and just saying that prayer for the first time and wanting to invite Jesus into my heart and give my life to Him. And so it really started there. But I would say there was multiple steps along the way where it's was more solidified, that this wasn't just something that, hey, I'm going to church because my parents go to church, or I said a prayer like you do in Sunday school, but it really started to solidify for me. And then I would say by age 12, it was just kind of this personal moment. And it wasn't in a service, it wasn't in a camp or anything. It was just me in my bedroom with my Bible, and just felt like, no, I'm all in. Jesus, I want to walk with you. I want to, go where you want me to go and do what you want me to do. So, again, somewhere along the lines as a young kid, I just had this sense of, I just want to be with you, Jesus. So, so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for, again, just my family around me, modeling that as well, and just that, that love for Jesus. So that's really where I got my start in that journey with Him.
Justin, sometimes we take it for granted. I come from a family as well of believers and raised in a Christian home and was guided all the way from an infant all the way until I left home by Christian parents. So easily we can take that for granted because not everybody has that.
Yeah, absolutely. For the most part, many people come to Christ before the age of 18, for the first time. And so we definitely need to, take that into consideration. But of course, we all have a different journey. Some just didn't have that opportunity to hear about Jesus until later in life. And but one way or another, we can find our way to Him. And so, yeah, just grateful for that heritage in my family. Mm-hmm.
Well, you came to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, and then you entered into ministry. Kind of walk us through your ministry journey that got you into the pastoral field.
Sure. Well, I would say for me, it really launched when I was 16 years old. I was at a Oregon youth conference and was just in a time of worship. And I just remember opening my eyes, looking out at the crowd of students there, and I just felt very clearly this word from the Lord of like, I'm calling you to reach this generation. And that was all that I needed. I was like, okay, I think I know what that means. And obviously there were different things I needed to continue to figure out and how to pursue all of that. But my pursuit of, really a call I felt into youth ministry at that time was to connect with Northwest University, which is the Assembly of God University out in the Seattle area. And, they had a youth ministry degree and I got accepted to that school and I was like, hey, that'd be fun to go up and be in the big city in the Seattle area. And so I did that, went up to Northwest University, majored in youth ministry. And then just before I wrapped up my time there, I had been, got my credentialing with the Assembly of God. And then right after graduated in May, and then started full-time as youth pastor in June. And that really, began that ministry journey for me. And we were in a church in a town called Bellevue, again, just kind of outside the Seattle area. And, we were there for about 5 years as youth pastors. And that was a big deal because we had come to find out that we were actually the 7th youth pastors in 10 years. And so, there just was not a lot of continuity. And in fact, after we made it 6 months, they threw us a party because they're like, wow, you're still here. And then after a year, threw us another party, like, wow, you're really still here. And then after 2 years, one more party. And then after that, I guess they expected we were going to stick around. So, and I went into it with that mindset of, you can hardly get anything done in a year or two, and just wanted to stay as long as we could. And that was a great start in ministry. And from there, we transitioned and moved over to Missoula, Montana, to a great church over there, and continued on in youth ministry. And just had a great church, great staff that we're a part of, and was able to pastor another 5 years there at that church. So that was, the first, I guess, 11 years or so of our ministry journey was in those two different locations as youth pastors.
So from then with pastoring, tell us about your current role and what you got interested in, how you get interested in what you're doing now.
Yeah, so after our ministry role out in Montana, we made a transition and came back over to Western Washington, where some friends of ours had recently planted a church, and so we came over, and church plant, there's no money there to pay us, so we just felt like that was where we needed to go, and then find a different way to make an income. And so that's where I kind of leaned into some of the skills on the remodeling side of things, and was working for a few different contractors, and did that for about 4 years. And it was good. It was okay, but it wasn't what I felt called to do. It wasn't what I wanted to do long term. And it was hard on my body too. So I was ready to do something different, get back to working with people. And again, there wasn't really a specific role with the church that I could lean into, or anything that would provide income. And a good friend of mine that I'd known for a couple decades, also was in ministry many years. He had a couple years prior joined on with this company called Thrivent, doing financial planning, financial advice, and he began to share with me about what he was doing and how he was helping people, and then he eventually just asked me that, hey, what do you think? Would you want to pursue this and jump in? And my initial reaction was no. I'm like, no, I'm supposed to do ministry. It felt like a full-on career shift, and so I wasn't ready. A year later, I reached back out to him and I said, okay, Chad, run that by me again. Tell me the story. What does that look like? And that second go around, it just really began to resonate with me. This idea of getting to honestly really pastor people, but in the area of finances, and just the fact of with the company we could work with, that we could be very faith forward. There was no hindrance to either sharing your faith or, opening meetings in prayer, closing meetings in prayer, talking about just life with people, and also providing good financial advice. And so, after talking with a number of different mentors and friends and prayer and talking to my wife, just felt like that was the right next step for us. And that was about 5 years ago now. And it's just been an incredible journey of, getting to help now hundreds of different families in this area. And specifically, I would say in the area with pastors and ministry, because of that background that I had, I just, man, I have a special, I guess, passion for helping people that are in ministry or, looking to be in the ministry, and making sure that, that you're walking in wisdom with all that's out there. So that's a little bit of, how I got into it and where we're at now.
Well, Justin, let's transition now. I love hearing your background and your foundation, and that way we can really talk to our listeners and pastors from a ministry perspective, but also, 25 some years ago when I started pastoring, some of the major discussions when it came to finances and retirement was, one of the questions was, you need to opt out of Social Security because, in so many years there's going to be no money left. And then the other thing is, well, the rapture is going to happen. So why do you need a retirement account? Because the rapture is going to happen. And so all those things were prevalent. And, I've today have some dear friends who are now older in ministry and have no retirement and did not do any planning, right, wrong, or the other based upon, some of those issues I mentioned. And then the other thing is, well, I'm a pastor, I shouldn't have any money, and, money's evil. And I'm just a firm believer the Bible does not say money is evil. The love of money is evil.
Right.
And so I do believe God expects us, now I think we're just going to talk about pastors and ministry leaders and their personal finances, that they need to be wise stewards of their money. They need to take care of their families. And I was just determined in my pastoral ministry that just because I pastored, my family wasn't going to suffer financially. So we planned wisely on finances. So talk to us a little bit about personal finances and maybe some of those financial habits and, diversification. And let's just kind of start in the weeds a little bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first off, just echo, what you were saying there, related to, Social Security or not really having much of a long-term plan because, hey, this thing's going to wrap up here pretty soon anyway. Why have all these plans? And I saw that a little bit even in my father-in-law because he also got that same direction to, opt out of Social Security. And but wasn't able to or wasn't really just taught how to really save for retirement. And now he's in his 70s, but thankfully he did have enough years prior to ministry of getting some of those Social Security credits, so they got something there. But yeah, it's rough when you see that because Social Security can end up being a pretty key aspect of that, ongoing income piece in retirement. But what we talk about a lot is, while we don't believe that Social Security is going to completely go away, that yes, it's in a mess right now, but all it would take is just for Congress to get together and do a few tweaks, and over the next 10 years, we'll be just fine. But again, whether or not that will happen, we don't know. But but we always talk about how let's not just rely upon the government's retirement plan, but let's rely on what are some of the specific things that we can be doing personally, to be building up our own savings and retirement pieces. And so you could look at it from a personal finance standpoint, and first of all, just having those solid financial habits. If you're a Dave Ramsey fan at all, he talks about baby steps and things like budgeting, which is one of the most basic aspects of our personal finances. But there's so many that we talk to that they just don't even have a budget. In fact, I think they say 60% of Americans don't have a budget that they work off of. And so when you don't have a budget, you're not taking a look, each month as far as where is the money going? What are we actually spending our money on? It's hard to, really be dialed into that and be specific. And, we've got to, inspect what we're doing. And so, there's so many different budgeting resources out there, all these different apps that you can use. And, Dave Ramsey, has one called Every Dollar. That's a good one. My wife and I, we use one called YNAB, which is short for You Need a Budget. And it's a great program that we work with. From a savings
where could our
standpoint,
listeners access that, Justin?
Yeah, absolutely. So honestly, you could just go to everydollar.com or ynab.com. Those are two, really good programs. I would say Every Dollar is a little bit more simplistic, and both of those have a free version or a paid version. And I would recommend you do the paid version because it's like $99 or $120 for the year, but then you can connect all of your accounts to that budgeting platform. So it's not just a static budget that you're working with. It's grabbing in all of your different accounts so that you can keep track of everything live. So that's how you can do it. You can either Google it or just ynab.com, everydollar.com.
So next point, so having a budget, having a savings, certainly decreasing debt, saving for retirement. Then this next piece probably might elude some, but how about the topic of diversification?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a financial term, but you can find diversification throughout Scripture as well. That we shouldn't have everything that we financially, anyways, in one basket or one type of instrument, but that there's multiple ways to diversify our resources. And really, the three main types that we talk about are time, type, and taxes. So when we say diversification of time, we're talking about, we should really look at it as three different buckets that we have. There's a short, a mid, and a long-term bucketing strategy we talk about. So, your short-term money, that's probably going to be a savings, maybe it's in a money market or a CD type of thing at the bank. That's money that we need now or in the very near future. It should be very safe, very liquid, conservative, and ready to go. That's probably where we're paying our bills from, or, maybe we're saving up for a trip in the next few months or something like that. So we're going to have a short time duration bucket. Now we're going to have a mid-term duration, and that might be, hey, we're saving up for the next few years for a big remodel on the house. Or maybe we're saving up for that destination wedding you were talking about, Trent.
Yeah.
And with that though, we don't want to be okay with just getting the 0.025% that you get in a bank savings account. We should be looking at some different ways that we could be saving, maybe even leaning into things like mutual funds, or ETFs, some of these different investment options where we can get better rates of return. Now, right now we're in a season that we've not been in a long time with very high interest rates, and with the Fed interest rate being around 5.25%, it's now made things like CDs or high yield savings accounts or money markets be generating almost a 5% yield. And that's a pretty good yield to have on a pretty safe investment. And then when it comes to the long-term investments, that's now what we're talking about, retirement, most of the time. And that's where, we should be really leaning into even more of a moderate to an aggressive type of an investment mix where, we should be getting 8, 10, 12% return on our money. And I will say it's been very rough sometimes sitting down with pastors that have had a, retirement account for the last 20 years, but they haven't looked at it. They just started it. And over that 20-year period, they got about a 3% rate of return.
Yeah.
That could be a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars, just because of not being, having the right mix of the investment on that long-term investment. So I think that's something just be aware of on that diversification is short money can be safe and conservative. Midterm money, let's get a little bit of extra growth. With that long-term money, you have time on your side. We can be more aggressive and shoot for those higher, hopefully double-digit, rates of return. And then, as far as the different types, there's things like, fixed rates at a bank. There's, guaranteed aspects of our future income. Trent, you mentioned Social Security. That's one aspect of it. Annuities can be another piece in the future where what we can do is we can take our lump sum savings that we've built up over the years, move that into an annuity, turn on the income aspect of that, and now we just created another income stream for us in retirement. It's kind of a way to create your own personal pension, because as we know, very few people still have pensions to this day, because they just got too expensive for companies to continue to run. And so now it's on us to kind of create that, that income piece in the future. So any questions on that?
I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but let's deal with one thing that comes up quite a bit when I talk to some ministry leaders, and they ask the question on, what is the best kind of life insurance, whether it's term or whole life, and which one is best in your opinion?
Yeah, great question. When it comes to, your working and earning years, so pre-retirement, we encourage people that you need to or should have some term life insurance in place, whether it's a 10, 15, 20, 30-year term. And at a minimum, it should be a face amount or death benefit aspect of at least 10 times your annual income. So if your annual take home, for the year is 50,000, a 10-year policy at a minimum should be 500,000 of coverage. And again, the idea there is that if you all of a sudden weren't able to, show up, have that income coming into the family, now we're protecting 10 years worth of that income. And, even making 50,000 a year, again, that's $500,000 over 10 years that wouldn't be coming to the family if all of a sudden you were gone. And so the nice thing about term life insurance is that it's very cheap. And the reason that it's cheap is because only about 6% of term policies get paid out as a death benefit. What that means is that 94% of the time we outlive that term and we don't need it, which is a good thing. But again, the reason why the insurance company is able to offer it for so cheap is that most of the time they win on that one. However, for those 6% of families that needed it, it made all the difference, right? So it's one of those things where it's cheap enough, where it's not that big of a deal from a monthly standpoint, but you're also now taking, the weight or that possible, devastating impact of, the primary person, earning the income, not having that income in the family anymore. So we do encourage that. And even if there's, a spouse that isn't working, there is absolute value there. We encourage, both spouses to have some kind of term life insurance, because even if you're a stay-at-home mom, a CEO of the household, there's studies out there that show that the value of what that person does on an annual basis is well over $100,000. if you were to have to pay that person to do all the things that they do. So, so there's absolutely reason for, both spouses to have some kind of term. And then when it comes to permanent insurance, like whole life or universal life, there are reasons to have that can be very, very helpful, very valuable. And one of the quick things I would say is that term life insurance is like renting, and permanent or cash value life insurance is owning. Right? When you have term, you're renting. There's no cash value that's being built up. When the policy is done, it's done. You don't get anything back for it. Whereas with the permanent policy, like a whole life, universal life, as you're paying into it, you're also building up a cash value aspect to that policy, depending on how you're funding it. And so now you're building up really an equity position inside of that policy. And there's some pretty neat tax benefits to that cash value inside of the policy. And then not only that, but that thing could be in place for the rest of your life. If you live to 100, it's still there. It doesn't just go away. So there can definitely be some great ways or reasons to use a permanent policy versus term.
Let's transition now from personal finances and let's talk about equipping the church.
Yeah.
And could you kind of talk our listeners to and unpack, education around generosity and charitable giving?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of our favorite things to talk about with pastors and churches and just generous Christians. There's so many different things that are available to us in really maximizing our resources when it comes to charitable giving or our generosity. One of those things is what's called a donor advised fund, and a donor advised fund is really like having a personal, like, family foundation almost, where as you move money into that donor advised fund, it actually can be a tax write-off for you, just as if you donated those funds to, your local church or a charitable organization that you care about. And so, donor advised funds are ways for people to, again, move money into that fund where it can be invested, but then funds can be directed out of that, just as if you were, writing the check from your bank account. But the upside to that is that if, maybe there's folks out there that have, large amounts of money, and what they could do is they could, move a big chunk of that in 1 year into a donor advised fund and get a much bigger tax, benefit from that. And then out of that donor advised fund, now they could do their tithing, they could do any of their, special giving that they want to do. And so we've seen donor advised funds become a really neat thing especially for those that, have, good resources and are wanting to give. But the other upside to that is we've seen families kind of come around it and even on an annual basis almost come up with their giving plan for the year of, okay, how are we going to, divvy out and give these funds this year as a family and kids. What are some of the things that are important to you? And then, even as a parent would pass away, they can then just let the kids inherit that donor advised fund, but with still those same giving parameters on it, and just keep on giving even after you passed. So that's a really neat one we talk about. There's something called an irrevocable life insurance trust, or an ILIT. And that's where we come back actually to that cash value life insurance piece, because what can happen with an ILIT is that, sometimes, let's say somebody has a large estate, they have many, many assets. What they can do is they can move those assets into this life insurance trust. It's irrevocable, meaning that they can't change it. You can't do anything different with it. Once it's set up, once the funds are in there, it is what it is. So you have to really know that that's what you want to do. But the upside to that is it can also then take off all the taxability of that entire amount that you just moved into that life insurance contract. And then on top of that, now you just turned, let's say, $100,000 into $1 million life insurance policy that will be given out tax-free at your passing. So that's a pretty neat one. And then the last one on that would just be what we call qualified charitable distributions, or QCDs. The neat thing about this is that once someone has turned 70 and a half, out of their retirement accounts, let's say an IRA, 401k type accounts where all of that money would otherwise be taxable, you can actually give directly out of that account to your church, to your charity, in what's called a QCD. And now, rather than it coming out to you taxable and then you give it, it just goes tax-free right to the organization. And that could be from, highly appreciated stocks and bonds and things like that as well. So, real quick story on that. We had a guy in our church that, was just in retirement, really moved, wanted to give towards a church building project we were doing. And so he made a $25,000 withdrawal from his IRA account, paid $5,000 in taxes, and then gave the church $20,000.
Yeah.
Which is great, but he could have just given $25,000 directly to the church and no taxes involved. So those are the types of things that, that we talk about with helping people individually understand how they can make an even greater impact within their church with their giving.
Totally.
Yeah.
Let's kind of finish our discussion on equipping the church, and let's talk about diversification in church finances.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the other things that we see in working with churches is that oftentimes there isn't a lot of direction for the different types of money within their accounts. There's usually just kind of one big account that everything is just kind of moving in and out of. But what we talk about with churches and pastors is it's really wise to have that same bucketing strategy of a short, mid, and long-term, bucket. So you should have, some of that cash flow aspect in a short-term bucket. So the money that's coming in, going out consistently each month, that should be in a short-term, safe, bank account, checking, savings, that type of thing. But when it comes to, project-specific funds, so hey, we're going to be saving up for, again, maybe it's something specifically with building or a missions project we're saving up for over a number of years. Hey, let's look at some more growth-oriented type options. And again, that's where we can lean into things like, mutual funds and, ETFs, things where we're invested, but doesn't mean we're, going crazy and going all in on Bitcoin or anything, but we're looking at some good, safe, long-term investments and getting a little bit better return. And then finally, we would say sometimes there's endowment funds that come into play where as even as people pass on, oftentimes they have what they call a planned gift, where at their passing they want to give a gift to the church that could go into, again, something like an endowment fund, where you're building up this longer term asset for again, projects and the things in the future, and that's where we could and should lean into something that's even a little bit more aggressive in getting those higher rates of return. So just like in our personal finances, we can do the same type of thing within the finances with church, while being very, very good stewards, of those funds. And I kind of liken it to, a parable of talents where, as the owner came back, he was excited to see the two that had doubled his money over the time that he was gone. And he was upset with the one that just buried it and just held on to it. Right. So there's even this sense from the Lord of let's grow what we have. Right. And so I think that, we really see that, helping out very well within the church frame as well.
Well, Justin, this has been so insightful and helpful, and I hope our listeners are taking notes and challenging their own personal finances and church finances, and making some adjustments and changes. Scripture tells us that God has given us the ability to get wealth, And wealth
Right.
is not just the fancy car, the big house. Wealth is what we have when everything else is paid due to good stewardship.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I want to thank you for those principles today. So as we conclude today, Justin, if there's some lasting comments, encouragement, maybe a lasting mantra or something that you could leave our pastors and ministry leaders today, what would you tell our audience?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things come to mind. Number one, especially if you're early on in ministry and just getting going, lean into the power of compound interest. Do something. Start early, even if it's $50 a month, $100 a month. We can show you compound interest calculators that will say you're going to have well over $1 million when you retire. So lean into that power. Compound interest. Be investing, saving consistently. And the second thing I would say is continue to seek wisdom in this area of finances. Read on different topics around finances. Seek wisdom from God. Seek wisdom from other advisors. I love in Proverbs talks about the wise person leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And it talks about also how with many advisors makes victory sure. So continue to just seek wisdom and knowledge and understanding in this area of finances, because I will tell you, and I still feel this to this day, every day there's more to learn about this. So I would say those are kind of the two key things. To be consistent with that. Setting something aside on the savings, and then just keep growing in your wisdom in this area. And I think those are the two main things I would speak to.
Justin, if our listeners want more information on financial planning and advisement, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So, whether by email, my email is very simple. It's just my first name, last name, Justin.Keeler. That's Keeler at thrivent.com. So send me an email, call me 253-499-6866. Or, just even if you Google Thrivent Justin Keeler, you'll be able to, land on my website there as well. So, those would be the easiest ways to get in contact. And I'd be happy to just even have a conversation with anybody that would love to dive into more of these topics further. And, just love, like I said, getting to help pastors and people in ministry.
Justin, I certainly appreciate your time today and help our listeners in financial planning personally and also for their local churches. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, you bet, Trent. Thank you so much for the invite, and so fun to be with you.
And keep saving for those two daughters' weddings.
Yeah, you as well. Good luck.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Hey, this is Dr. Trent Lambert with the Center of Thriving Leaders and Grace Theological Seminary, challenging you to keep thriving in ministry. Thanks for joining us. Hope you listen next time.
This is Dr. Trent Lambert with the Center for Thriving Leaders and Grace Theological Seminary, challenging you to keep thriving in ministry. Thanks for joining us today.